11, I'd roll across I-40 West. Coffee in the cup holder, 40,000 pounds to haul ahead. Channel 19 was mostly chatter, truck stop jokes and weather reports, till one old voice from Amarillo started checking in every night at 4. He'd say, "Breaker 19, how's everybody doing?" Like he knew us all by name. They called him Old Coyote, nobody knew where he lived. He'd warn about black ice in Kansas, or where the highway started to drift. When somebody broke down after midnight, he was always first to call. Didn't matter who you were, he answered every call. He'd finish every conversation with "Keep the shiny side up, boys." That voice on Channel 19 got a whole lot of us back home. Through blizzards, floods, and desert nights, none of us drove alone. You never saw his face, never shook his hand, but somewhere in that radio static was the best man in the land. October he went quiet, a week, then 2, then 3. The highway sounded different without his Tennessee draw to lead. One night a rookie keyed the mic. "Anybody heard Old Coyote?" "Nothing." Then a woman answered softly, "This is Linda. He passed away last Monday." She said he loved every one of y'all, even the ones he never met. He said the highway was too lonely to let anybody drive it by themselves. Nobody talked for nearly a mile. Now every night around 11, someone checks in on Channel 19. "Breaker 19, how's everybody doing tonight?" And before signing off, every driver says, "Keep the shiny side up." Not because it's just a saying, because it's how we remember him. Yeah, some men never become famous, they just become family to thousands of strangers. There's a pawn shop on the edge of Tulsa by the railroad line, where old guitars and wedding rings wait to outrun harder times. One rainy Tuesday afternoon, killing time on my lunch break, I walked inside that dusty room just to get out of the rain. Behind a shelf of hunting boots and yellowed photographs, hung a battered violin with a crack across its back. A handwritten tag beneath it read, "Not for sale today." And something about that little note made me stop and stay. The owner was an old man named Charlie Reed, who'd worked that counter 40 years, maybe more than he believed. I asked him why that violin never seemed to leave the wall. He smiled and poured us both some coffee, and he told me it all. Back in '87, when the old fields went bust, a young father brought it in because he had to feed his son. Said he'd buy it back someday when life got back on track. But the years kept moving forward, and he never made it back. So the violin in the pawn shop waits, like a promise frozen in time and space, for a hand that remembers every note it knew, for a dream that never quite made it through. Some things are worth more than money can say, more than a price tag fading away. And every scar in that old wood sings of the lives we carry in little things. A month later, Charlie called me out of the blue. Said, "You ain't gonna believe who's standing here wanting news." An old man with silver hair and hands worn thin with age had walked into the shop asking about that very case. He said, "My daddy used to play that fiddle every night till hard times took it from him. When I was just a child, he passed before he got it back, but he spoke about it still, and I promised if I found it, I'd bring it home for him." Now the violin from the pawn shop sings in a house where grandchildren gather and dream. Its melody carries across the room like a voice returning after years of silence too. Some things are worth more than money can say, more than a lifetime drifting away. And every scar in that old wood sings of the lives we carry in little things. At night the family gathered on the porch under Oklahoma stars, and for the first time in 40 years they heard their grandfather's song, not from a record or a story told, but from strings alive once more. And every note seemed to open up a long-forgotten door. Yeah, the violin from the pawn shop came home after decades wandering alone, and the music filled the spaces time had left behind. Now when the evening settles down and the cricket survives every fire. 'Cause love don't disappear with years, and dreams don't always die. Sometimes they just wait patiently for the right hands to arrive. There's a forgotten mine in town, tucked deep in Colorado hills, where the railway quit running and the clocks all learned to stand still. Most folks packed their lives in boxes when the silver dried away, but old Walter Green stayed behind and watched the years decay. Every evening at sundown, he'd walk the empty street, past the boarded up hotel and the church without a priest. Then he'd climb the ridge above town, where the cold winds always blew, and light a lantern by the tracks like he'd done his whole life through. The story went that 40 years ago, his young son disappeared on a snowstorm night in January, the worst they'd seen in years. The boy had left to catch a train and never made it there. Nobody found no final words, just questions in the mountain air. People called it foolish hope, a wound that wouldn't heal, but Walter never missed a night, no matter how he'd feel. Through blizzards, floods, and summer heat, through every passing year, that lantern kept on burning bright for someone who might appear. And the last lantern in Black Creek still shines where the old rails meet, like a promise made that never broke, like a prayer rising through the smoke. When the whole world says let go, some hearts refuse to lose their hope, so the last lantern in Black Creek burns for the one who never came home. And one October evening, when the aspens turned to gold, a stranger stepped off a freight train, looking tired, gray and old. He stood beneath that lantern light with tears upon his face, and stared toward the silent town like he recognized the place. Walter heard the footsteps coming down the gravel road. At first he thought the mountain wind was playing tricks again, but when the stranger softly said, "Dad, it's finally me," 40 years of sorrow broke like rain into the sea. And the last lantern in Black Creek still shines where the old rails meet, like a promise made that never broke, like a prayer rising through the smoke. When the whole world says let go, some hearts refuse to lose their hope, and the last lantern in Black Creek burned long enough to bring him home. Some are better left that way. But every soul in that old town still talks about that autumn night when hope outlived the hands of time and faith outshined the dark. Now the lantern's gone from Black Creek, the tracks lie quiet in their sleep, but the legend travels mountain winds through every valley, ridge and stream, that sometimes love keeps waiting long after reason says it's done, and sometimes one small light can guide a lost heart safely home. Yeah, sometimes one small light can guide a lost heart safely home. There's a pair of work boots hanging from the old water tower just outside a town called Red Oak, Oklahoma. Faded leather, cracked and worn, swinging in the prairie wind since before I was born. As a kid, I'd ask my daddy every time we'd drive by, why's nobody taking those boots down from the sky? He'd just grin and say, one day you'll understand. Then he'd shift that old truck into gear and head across the land. Years later at 17, I learned the story true about a man named Caleb Ross that only old-timers knew. He worked every ranch for 50 miles around, fixing fences after storms when they came crashing down. One summer brought a wild file racing through the plains, the kind that turns the daylight orange and makes grown men pray. When the flames jumped Miller Creek and headed straight for town, Caleb stayed behind to help while everybody else got out. And those shoes by the water tower still dance with the Oklahoma wind, like a reminder of a man who gave more than he had to give. Some folks leave behind a fortune, some leave a famous name, but some leave a town still standing, and that ain't a small thing. For 20 hours straight he worked with volunteers, digging lines and moving cattle through smoke and fear. The fight finally turned away just north of County Road 9, and every family made it out with a little luck and time. The next morning when the danger passed and the sky turned blue, the town gathered at the diner trying to figure out what to do. The mayor climbed a ladder with Caleb standing near and tied those old work boots high above the water tower's fear. Now those shoes by the water tower still dance with the Oklahoma wind, like a reminder of a man who and that ain't a small thing. Caleb never liked attention, never made a speech or boast, said I only did what anybody would have done. But everyone knew better, 'cause when fear was running wild, he chose to stay and fight, while others ran for miles. So the shoes by the water tower still catch the evening sun, watching over fields of wheat and children out having fun. And every new generation asks why they're hanging there. Then somebody tells the story, and Caleb's still with us somewhere. Yeah, those shoes by the water tower still dance in the prairie air. I was headed home to Tennessee after 6 long months overseas. A window seat, row 12, seat 8, just counting miles till yesterday. The little girl climbed on the plane, holding a stuffed bear in the rain. She stopped beside the empty chair and asked, is somebody sitting there? Her mama smiled and shook her head. Honey, not anymore, she said. She buckled in and held her close, while silence filled that narrow road. A flight attendant leaned my way, whispered words I'll never shake. Her daddy was supposed to fly today, he never made it home. That empty seat on flight 417 said more than words have ever been. No suitcase there, no cowboy hat, just everything she wished she had. Some heroes miss their flights to heaven before they make it home again. And sometimes love is measured most by the empty seats we leave behind. Halfway through the flight she looked at me, asked if I'd color with her please. She drew a house beneath blue skies with one man standing way up high. She pointed at the clouds outside, said Daddy says that's where he'll hide. Whenever I get scared at night, he'll turn the porch light on. I had to turn and face the window so she wouldn't see me cry. That empty seat on flight 417 carried more than memory. It carried dreams that never landed, promises still floating free. Every mile across those clouds felt heavier somehow, because love doesn't disappear, it just changes where it's found. When we landed in Nashville, she reached up and hugged my neck, then tucked that little drawing inside my jacket vest. She whispered, "If you see my daddy, tell him I was brave. There wasn't a dry eye in Terminal C." Now every time I board a plane, I always notice one empty place. Not every chair is truly vacant. Some are filled with grace. And somewhere above these endless clouds, where the morning meets the blue, I believe a father smiled that day, watching his little girl come through. Yeah, I'll never forget the empty seat on flight 417. There's a faded blue suit on the clothesline today, dancing in the Carolina breeze. Mama pinned it up at sunrise, right beside the bed sheets and the leaves. Most folks drive right past our farmhouse, never think twice what they see. But that old suit's got 40 years of family history. Daddy wore it when he married Mama, in a church out by Miller Creek. Wore it when he held my sister, just a baby, 3 weeks old and asleep. He wore it every Easter Sunday and every funeral in town. If somebody needed help or prayer, that blue suit showed up around. That Sunday suit on the clothesline ain't just cotton thread and seams. It's every promise that he kept and every sacrifice unseen. Yeah, time may fade the color and life may wear us thin, but the things that really matter are stitched beneath the skin. Last winter we laid Daddy to rest. The church bell echoed through the pines. The pews were full of neighbors. Some drove for hours just to arrive. Afterward, Mama couldn't bear to lock that suit away. So every spring she hangs it out and lets the sunlight touch those days. That Sunday suit on the clothesline ain't just cotton thread and seams. It's every promise that he kept and every sacrifice unseen. Yeah, time may fade the color and life may wear us thin, but the things that really matter are stitched beneath the skin. Now my little boy asks questions. Why's that jacket hanging there? And I tell him, son, that's what love looks like when a good man spends it everywhere. That Sunday suit on the clothesline still sways beneath the southern sky, like a quiet kind of legacy that never really says goodbye. And every time the wind catches it, I can almost see him grin, 'cause the best parts of a father's life are stitched beneath our skin. Yeah, that old blue suit keeps teaching us, even now, after he's been gone. The scoreboard lights were flickering above the 50-yard line. October wind rolled through the stands on a cold Nebraska night. I sat alone on the top row where I used to hear them cheer. Now the bleachers felt a little bigger with every passing year. There was a time I wore that jersey with my number on the back. Thought Friday nights would last forever underneath those stadium lamps. But life moves faster than a fastball and stronger than your plans. One day you're chasing glory, next day you're shaking working hands. Now I punch the clock at sunrise at the grain mill by the tracks. Got two kids who wear my old cleats and a mortgage on my back. The mirror shows a little gray where the dark used to be, and the dreams I thought I'd lost are staring from the stands at me. My oldest boy ran onto the field wearing number 23. Same nervous smile I used to hide before the referee's whistle blew for me. And suddenly I understood what all those years were for. Some victories arrive much later than the ones you keep in score. Give me one more season of sunsets and small town lights, one more harvest moon hanging over Friday night, one more chance to stand beside the people I call mine. 'Cause the best things in this life don't last forever, they just just borrow time. One more season of laughter around the kitchen table. One more season of faith when life gets unstable. Every year keeps teaching me what matters most to hold. You don't count your life in trophies, you count it in souls. The game was tied in the fourth quarter, with 2 minutes left to play. My boy threw a pass downfield, and the whole town lost its mind that day. The crowd erupted like thunder rolling across the plains. But what hit me harder was the pride running through my veins. Afterward we drove home slowly beneath the starry sky. He talked about the winning play while I just smiled and drove, because someday he'll leave this town and chase a dream beyond these roads. And when he does, I hope he learns the thing I finally know. Give me one more season of sunsets and small town lights. One more harvest moon hanging over Friday night. One more chance to stand beside the people I call mine. Cause the best things in this life don't last forever, they just borrow time. One more season of laughter around the kitchen table. One more season of faith when life gets unstable. Every year keeps teaching me what matters most to hold. You don't count your life in trophies, you count it in the souls. The wheat turns gold and falls away. Winter comes and spring returns again. The years keep rolling like a train, but every season leaves a gift behind. And when the final whistle blows, I won't remember every score. I'll remember who was standing there when I walk through every door. So give me one more season of ordinary days. One more sunrise shining through the window's dusty haze. One more Sunday church bell echoing through the air. One more chance to tell my family just how much I care. One more season of memories still waiting to be made. One more season watching children slowly find their way. And when the good Lord calls me home beyond these fields of gold, I'll thank Him for the seasons more than anything I own. I was 23 and reckless, working shrimp boats off the coast. Thought I had forever waiting, thought a young man couldn't lose much. She ran the bait shop by the harbor, with salt wind tangled in her hair. Every morning she'd wave me out, standing on that weathered pier. Then came September's angry waters, black clouds rolling from the sea. The radio warned all vessels, turn around immediately. But pride can be a dangerous compass when you're trying to prove you're strong. I pushed farther into open water, and before long everything went wrong. And the lighthouse at Cape Fear cut through the storm and all my fear, like a promise shining through the rain, calling me back home again. When the waves were high as mountains and hope was hanging by a thread, that light kept reaching through the darkness till it led me back instead. The engine died around midnight and the sea threw me around. I thought about her waiting on the shoreline, praying I'd be found. Then through the sheets of rain and thunder, a single beam broke through the black. I pointed my bow toward that light and somehow found my way back. And the lighthouse at Cape Fear cut through the storm and all my fear, like a promise shining through the rain, calling me back home again. When the waves were high as mountains and hope was hanging by a thread, that light kept reaching through the darkness till it led me back instead. That was 20 years ago this autumn. Now my hair's turning gray, and every time I pass that shoreline, I still bow my head and pray. Some lights are built from stone and steel, some shine inside a faithful heart, and both can save a drifting soul when the world falls apart. Yeah, the lighthouse at Cape Fear still stands against the passing years, and every time its beam sweeps by, it reminds me how close I came that night. I got the girl, we raised a family, built a life beside the sea, and it all began with the light in the storm that refused to give up on me. Yes, miracles don't make the news, they just got a man back home. Cheyenne, Wyoming, dust rising under arena lights. The whole town packed those metal bleachers, waiting on the ride of the night. I was 25 and full of fire, with a borrowed dream and a busted knee, holding on to one last season before life decided who I'd be. The chute gate rattled like thunder, that black bull weighed near 2 grand. Folks called him Devil's Highway, nobody stayed on him long. I wrapped that rope around my glove, heard the crowd fade into the dark. Funny how the loudest moments always start with a quiet heart. It's only 8 seconds forever, 8 seconds hanging between don't work that way. Sometimes a whole life fits inside 8 seconds forever. The gate flew open like a shotgun blast, and all hell broke loose below. That bull twisted left then right, trying hard to throw my soul. I felt my shoulder nearly give out, heard the buzzer cut through the air, and when my boots hit Wyoming dirt, I knew I'd left a piece of me there. It's only 8 seconds forever, 8 seconds hanging between fear and faith, 8 seconds to prove to yourself you ain't backing down today. The world keeps telling you play it safe, but some dreams don't work that way. Sometimes a whole life fits inside 8 seconds forever. I never won a gold buckle, never made the Hall of Fame, but I still see those lights every time I close my eyes. And honestly, I'd do it all again. 'Cause some victories don't need trophies, just a story worth telling someday. It's only 8 seconds forever, but those seconds changed my life. Taught me courage ain't about winning, it's showing up and taking the ride. Now my son wears my old cowboy hat and dreams beneath the same big sky. And when he asks me what it means to live, I tell him find something worth risking for. 'Cause the best moments don't last forever, but forever can live in a moment. There's an old brass key above the kitchen door, hanging from a crooked nail since '74. Most folks never notice when they walk inside, but Grandpa said that key saved our lives. Back when Kentucky coal jobs disappeared and hard times settled in for years, bills piled high and hope ran low like winter snow along the road. One December night, a stranger knocked, cold rain dripping from his coat. Said his truck broke down beyond the ridge and nowhere else was open. Grandma fed him beans and cornbread. Grandpa gave him a place to stay. Before he left the next morning, he quietly handed them that key. That key above the door reminds us You never know what kindness starts. One small act can change a lifetime, leave a mark upon a heart. When you're down to almost nothing, and the world feels cold and far, sometimes grace shows up uninvited, leaves a light where darkness was. A month later, Grandpa lost his job and thought he'd have to leave the land. And then a letter came from Lexington, signed by the same stranger's hand. He owned a growing hardware company, needed someone he could trust. Said a man who helps a stranger in the rain is the kind of man I want. That key above the door reminds us, you never know what kindness starts. One small act can change a lifetime, and leave a mark upon a heart. But when you're down to almost nothing, and the world feels cold and far, sometimes grace shows up uninvited, and leaves a light where darkness was. Now every Christmas Eve we gather, kids and grandkids packed inside, and Grandpa's story gets retold as snow drifts past the window light. That old brass key still catches candle glow, like a blessing frozen in time. Yeah, that key above the door reminds us the richest things can't be bought. A warm meal, an open doorway, and helping hands when hope is lost. The world keeps spinning faster, but some truths never get too old. You never know which simple kindness might come back 100-fold. So we leave that key right where it's been, above the door for all to see. A reminder that a stranger once arrived and changed our family. Murphy's Cafe off Route 66. There's a chair by the window, table 6. Every morning at 7, the coffee gets poured, even though nobody walks through that door. Old Joe runs the place like he always has, wipes down the counter, checks the gas, and right beside the jukebox glowing blue sits a plate nobody ever moves. Back in 2005, a young Marine named Ben, he used to stop by every Friday with his friends. He'd order chicken fried steak and peach pie too. Leave $1 in the jar before he flew. Then one spring he shipped overseas, promised his mama he'd be home by Christmas Eve. But fate had different plans that year, and the whole town learned the meaning of fear. So the empty chair at table 6 still waits where he used to sit, beside the window facing west toward the sunset he loved best. And every soul who walks inside knows the reason why some heroes leave this world too soon, but they never really say goodbye. Years rolled by like freight trains in the night. Kids grew up and the town changed with time. The old gas station closed, the hardware store moved on, but that chair stayed right where it belonged. Then one July afternoon, a little boy asked why his grandpa always tipped his hat when he walked by. The old man smiled and pulled up a seat and told a story every child should keep, about the empty chair at table 6, still waiting where he used to sit, beside the window facing west toward the sunset he loved best. And every soul who walks inside knows the reason why some heroes leave this world too soon, but they never really say goodbye. No statue stands in that small town square, no headlines carry his name anymore, but sometimes the strongest monuments are the ones behind ordinary doors. A cup of coffee, a faded photo, a place nobody dares replace, because memory lives a little longer when love is given space. And the empty chair at table 6 still waits where he used to sit, while the morning sun spills through the glass, and another year quietly passes. New faces come, old faces go. That's how life unfolds, but every heart that learns his story carries a piece of him forward. Yeah, the empty chair at table 6 ain't empty after all. Was a man in Amarillo everybody knew by sight, riding an old green bicycle from morning until night. No fancy truck, no business sign, no ads in any paper, just a paint-stained denim jacket and a pocket full of brushes. He'd stop at farms and trailer parks, little houses off the road, painting names on rusty mailboxes where the prairie grasses grow. $10 if you had it, free if times were running tight, and somehow every mailbox looked brand new in the evening light. Nobody knew much about him except his name was Ray. He never talked about the past or where he'd come from anyway. But every Sunday after church, he'd sit beneath the cottonwoods, sketching barns and windmills like nobody else could. Then one spring a tornado tore through Carson County hard, ripped roofs off homes and scattered lives across 100 yards. Families lost photographs, letters, keepsakes from the years, the kind of things that can't be fixed with lumber, nails, and tears. That's when the man who painted mailboxes picked up more than paint and steel. He started painting memories for folks trying to heal. Oh, wedding days and harvest moons, Grandpa standing by the fields, and every brushstroke seemed to say, some things survive if they're remembered still. For months he worked inside the church from sunrise until dark, turning faded snapshots into pieces of the heart. One by one the townsfolk came to see what he could do, and every painting brought back pieces of the lives they once knew. Then a reporter from Dallas came asking for his name, said the whole state's talking about these beautiful works he'd made. Ray just smiled and shook his head, said the story ain't about me, it's about helping people hold on to what they thought they'd never see. Yeah, the man who painted mailboxes picked up more than paint and steel. He started painting memories for folks trying to heal. Oh, wedding days and harvest moons, grandmas dancing in the fields, and every brushstroke seemed to say, some things survive if they're remembered still. When autumn came, he disappeared just as quietly as he'd arrived. Left no address, no forwarding trail, just colors that were left behind. But in the church hall hangs a sign written by a child one day. Thank you for bringing back our stories, and nobody ever took it away. Now every mailbox down those roads still shines beneath the Texas sky. But what folks talk about these days ain't the names he painted on the side. It's how one stranger showed a town that healing takes more than time. And sometimes the richest people in the world leave everything behind. Yeah, sometimes the richest people in the world leave everything behind. Bought an old farmhouse outside of Lexington, white paint peeling off porch, leaning toward the sun. The realtor said it's been empty near 30 years or more. the kind of place where memories still creak through every floor. I spend my Saturdays fixing boards and patching cracks, pulling down old wallpaper nobody wanted back. Then one rainy afternoon, behind a bedroom wall, I found a faded envelope that looked like it survived it all. The paper smelled of dust and time, the ink was turning brown. It started to, whoever finds this, if this house is still around. It was written by a farmer's wife in 1953 to a child she was carrying but knew she'd never see. She wrote about the dog they had, the willow by the creek, how his father sang while working and prayed before he'd sleep. She said, if life gets hard someday, don't let bitterness take root. The strongest hearts are often grown where storms have passed on through. And I read every word by the light of a lamp, like a voice reaching out through the years and the dust, from a woman I never know, in a world long gone away, still finding a way to say, hold on to the people you love, don't wait too long to speak, 'cause time keeps moving like a river, and tomorrow ain't guaranteed. I couldn't stop thinking about that letter for days, so I started digging through records, old archives and names. Turns out she passed that same year, before her son was born. And he grew up in that farmhouse where she never saw him grow. The boy became a teacher and lived into his 80s, raised 3 daughters of his own, and left behind a family. I tracked one granddaughter down in Bowling Green one night, and when she read her grandmother's words, she broke down and cried. She read every word by the light of her phone, like a hand reaching out from a place she'd never known, from a woman she'd only seen in a picture on the wall, still answering a call to hold on to the people you love, don't wait too long to speak, 'cause time keeps moving like a river, and tomorrow ain't guaranteed. There's 100 ways to leave your mark, most of them won't make the news. Sometimes forever starts with paper and the truth you choose to leave behind. The house still stands beside the willow, the creek still runs the same, and now that letter rests inside a frame where no one will forget her name. Yeah, keep those words beside the door where I can read them when life gets hard, a reminder that we're all connected by the stories in our hearts. And long after these walls are gone, long after I'm gone too, maybe somebody else will find a piece of hope hidden in the things we leave behind. Yeah, a piece of hope hidden in the things we leave behind. On Cedar Street in Arkansas stood a little yellow house where Miss Ruth sat every evening when the sun was going down. She'd stitch this beside the front porch swing with a basket at her feet, adding patches to a quilt nobody had ever seen complete. Some came from a soldier's jacket, some from a baby dress, some from church choir robes worn on Sundays at their best. Every scrap had someone's story, some between the seams, like a map of all the lives that built that little community. For 30 years folks dropped off pieces of their past, a work shirt from the sawmill, a ribbon from a graduation cap. And nobody really knew what Ruth intended it to be, but she'd smile and say, "You'll understand eventually." Then one April night a fire swept through downtown fast. The feed store, bank and barber shop and disappeared in ash. The town hall burned to the foundation, records lost in smoke, and with them went a century of stories people hoped they'd always hold. That's when she brought out the quilt on Cedar Street, spread it wide for everyone to see. Every patch of name, every thread of memory, every color telling where we'd been. When the photographs were gone, when the old records disappeared, that quilt became the history we thought we'd lost that year. The mayor stood there speechless as she laid it on the floor. More than 2,000 pieces stitched from door to door. Children found their grandparents, old friends found younger days, entire generations hidden in the fabric she'd saved. There was a square from the first schoolhouse built in 1932, a piece from a wedding tablecloth everybody knew. And when folks saw their stories there, something changed inside. They realized the town ain't buildings, it's the people tied together through time. That's what lived inside the quilt on Cedar Street. Every laugh and every defeat, every harvest, every storm, every dream, woven into something bigger than a single memory. When the photographs were gone, when the old records disappeared, that quilt became the history we thought we lost that year. Miss Ruth passed away that winter at 94 years old. But before she left, she wrote a note, folded careful in the quilt's old folds. It said, "The strongest threads are people, the cloth is only cloth. Take care of one another, and you'll never truly be lost. Now the quilt hangs in a museum built where the old town hall once stood, and school kids stop and stare a while, like every generation should. They see more than scraps of fabric, more than colors stitched with care. They see the heart of a small town story still hanging there. Yeah, the quilt on Cedar Street still holds us all together. Me and Jenny climbed that water tower on a July night in '95, with a pocket knife and 2 spray cans, thinking we'd stay 25. She painted her heart, I wrote our names high above that little town. Said even if the paint fades someday, they'll never take us down. Life had other plans waiting. She took a job in New Orleans. I stayed fixing tractors with my daddy, living somewhere in between. Letters turned to Christmas cards, then silence after one last call. Funny how forever sometimes slips away without a fight at all. But our names are still up on that water tower, faded by the rain and sun, like 2 kids who thought love would always outrun time. The whole town's changed around it. New stores where the fields once stood. But every time I look up there, I remember who I was. 30 years rolled by like freight trains, until the town fair came around. I heard somebody call my name, turned, and there she was in the crowd. Silver in her auburn hair, same green eyes I'd always known. She smiled and pointed toward the tower, said, guess they never painted over us. Yeah, our names are still up on that water tower, holding on above Main Street. Proof that some old promises refuse to leave. The years can steal your youth midnight we climbed that ladder again, slower than we used to be. She reached out and touched those faded letters, then reached her hand for me. She whispered, I never stopped wondering. I whispered, neither did I. Now our names are still up on that water tower, but tonight they mean something new. Not two reckless teenagers, but two hearts that made it through. We can't go back to 1995, and neither of us wants to try, 'cause love ain't about staying young forever. It's finding your way back before goodbye. Yeah, some stories aren't written in books, they're written where the whole town can look up. Every Friday after work, I'd stop at Miller's grocery store. There was an old man at register 3 who'd been there 30 years or more. Same blue vest, same crooked smile, always called me young man still, even after my beard turned gray. He never lost that simple gift. He knew every kid by first name and every widow in the county. One December just before Christmas, a young mama stood in line. Milk, diapers, bread, and medicine. Her card got declined 3 times. She whispered, put the toys back. Her little boy just looked away before anybody said a word. That old cashier reached beneath the counter, pulled out an envelope, and quietly paid the whole bill. He said, Christmas ain't something you buy, it's something you become. The whole store fell silent, except that little boy crying as he hugged his mama tight. Some people preach kindness, some people clock in and live it. The following Monday morning, Register 3 stood empty. A little handwritten sign read, Frank retired yesterday. Thank you for 31 wonderful years. That's when we all realized nobody had ever asked who had been filling that envelope every December. 3 weeks later, The new cashier found another envelope. Inside was $500 and one short note. If somebody needs this, don't ask their name. Signed, Frank. Now every Christmas there's still an envelope under Register 3. Nobody knows who puts money in it anymore, because the people Frank helped started helping too. Funny how generosity works. It never really ends. It just changes hands. Saw her standing by the gas station out on Highway 84. The summer storm was rolling in, thunder shaking the store. She held a cardboard coffee cup, hair dancing in the wind, and something in that moment made the whole world slow again. I offered her a ride to town before the clouds broke loose. She laughed and said, only if you're playing something good with roots. An old country song came through, the speakers crackling low, and somewhere between two verses I forgot where I was going. We spent that Friday driving roads that barely had a name, crossing little county bridges while the sky poured down like rain. She told me about Georgia and the dreams she'd left behind. I told her how I'd built these walls, one heartbreak at a time. The windshield wipers kept the beat as evening settled in, and every mile beside her felt like a place I'd never been. Not because the road was new, but because she made it shine like sunlight breaking through a storm I'd carried for a long time. Now every time the rain comes down, I hear her laughing through this town, like a melody drifting from an old FM, and I fall in love all over again. She turned gray skies into gold somehow, made forever feel like right now. Every drop that hits this roof tonight still whispers her name in the rain outside. 3 years later by the river where the willow shadows sway, I got down on one knee at sunset as the daylight slipped away. She cried before I asked the question, said yes before I spoke, and the river carried echoes through the Tennessee smoke. Now there's a photograph beside our bed from that summer stormy day, two young hearts beneath the station sign while the clouds rolled away. Sometimes life arrives so quietly you almost miss the sign. Then one unexpected moment changes everything inside. Now every time the rain comes down, I hear her laughing through this town, like a melody drifting from an old FM, and I still thank those storm clouds rolling in for leading me right there. So let the rain keep falling down across these fields outside our town. Every drop's a memory I can't replace of the day heaven put her in my way. She turned a passing storm into a lifetime, turned a lonely road into a finish line. And every night when the thunder rolls again, I still hear her name in the rain. Yes, every night when the thunder rolls again, I still hear her name in the rain. I came home early on a rainy Thursday, but still clinging to my old work boots. Your truck was there beside the porch, but another one was there too. The kitchen window glowed so warm, like every other night before. Funny how a man can lose his whole world standing at his own front door. He froze a moment that you saw me. He slipped out without a word. The silence hit a whole lot harder than anything I could have heard. Wedding pictures line the hallway, frames we'd picked out years ago. Every smile hanging on that wall belong to people I don't know. So I left my ring there on the table, right beside the life we made. Some promises are built forever, some just slowly fade away. I didn't scream, I didn't curse, there wasn't anything to prove. Sometimes the strongest kind of goodbye is simply choosing to leave. I loaded up my old half-ton, didn't take much more than clothes. That front porch swing kept moving softly in the wind we used to know. Halfway down that gravel driveway, I look back one final time. Not because I wanted you, just to leave the hurt behind. So I left my ring there on the table, right beside the life we made. Some promises are built forever, some just slowly fade away. You can keep the house and memories, every picture on the wall. Love ain't worth begging for. of it all. Months roll by like passing boxcars. Healing never comes overnight, but every sunrise found me stronger than the man who drove away that night. I learned a broken heart don't stay broken if you let tomorrow in. Yeah, I left my ring there on the table, but I found myself again. Some endings feel like losing everything, till they become where healing begins. Now when I look back through those years, there ain't no bitterness inside, 'cause the best revenge I'd ever found was building a better life. And somewhere that old gold band still lies, but it doesn't belong to me anymore. First snow hit the fence lines yesterday, dusting all the cattle trails in white. I was patching up a gate on the north side ranch when I saw a truck roll in at twilight. 3 years gone since she drove away, leaving nothing but a note and a ring. Now she's standing by the old windmill like she never missed a thing. She said, I heard your mama wasn't doing well, and she looked down at her hands, the same hands that used to hold mine tight back when we made all our plans. The mountains stood silent in the distance, like they knew we had words left unsaid. And every mile she traveled since then was written in her eyes instead. Under this Montana sky tonight, the stars are burning clear and bright, like they never stopped believing we'd find our way through every lonely mile and every hard goodbye. If love's a fire, hearts never die. It just waited through the cold and time, and here we are beneath that endless light, under this Montana sky tonight. Mama smiled when she walked through the door, like a prayer had finally come true. Coffee steamed on the kitchen table, and the whole room felt brand new. We talked until the moon climbed high, about the years we can't get back. Then she reached across and touched my hand, and somehow closed every crack. Under this Montana sky tonight, the stars are burning clear and bright, like they never stop still sings across the prairie grass. And tomorrow ain't promised to anyone. So I pulled her close and whispered low, I'm done running from what we've become. Under this Montana sky tonight, I can finally see my life. Not in the dreams I chased too far away, but in the arms that held on through the fight. The mountains watch, the stars still shine, and for the first time, the future feels right. Yeah, forever starts right here tonight. Under this Montana sky tonight. There's a wooden bench at mile 42 along an old Wyoming trail with a mountain view. It ain't on any map you'll find in a tourist stand, just a place beside the pines where the wildflowers still dance. I first saw it one September after 14 hours on the road, hauling cattle through the bighorns with a heavy load. The sun was dropping low, painting gold across the sky, and carved into the back were words that caught my eye. If you're tired, sit a while. A year went by before I passed that way again. This time after losing my brother, my closest friend. The world felt colder than the snow, building on the peaks, and grief had stolen every answer I was trying to seek. So I pulled over by that bench as evening settled in, found a notebook and a weatherproof box tucked underneath it then, filled with notes from strangers passing through the years, written in faded ink, stained by rain and tears. At the bench at mile 42, people leave pieces of the truth, a prayer, a memory, a goodbye, a reason to keep moving through the night. Some roads are lonely, that's for sure. Some wounds take longer to endure, but hope keeps showing up somehow. At the bench at mile 42. One note came from a trucker who beat cancer in the spring. Another from a young girl learning what forgiveness means. A widow wrote about her husband and the stars he loved to see, and every page somehow felt like it was speaking straight to me. I sat there till the moon rose high above the mountain line, reading stories from strangers who had survived their hardest times. And then I took my pen and wrote my brother's name inside. didn't feel alone that night. At the bench at mile 42, people leave pieces of the truth, a prayer, a memory, a goodbye, a reason to keep moving through the night. Some roads are lonely, that's for sure. Some wounds take longer to endure, but hope keeps showing up somehow. At the bench at mile 42, nobody knows who built it there, or who first placed that notebook down. But sometimes the best things in this world appear without a sound. Not every hero wears a badge, not every gift has a name. Sometimes healing starts with strangers who've walked through the same pain. Now every fall I stop again and add another page with a pen, watching the sunset fade beyond the blue. And when life gets heavy, when the answers disappear, I remember all those voices that I found out there, and how a simple wooden bench helped carry people through. Yeah, hope still waits beside the pines at the bench at mile 42.
On a gravel road in northern Montana, where the winters cut like glass, there stood a one-room general store that somehow still managed to last. The signs faded, the floorboards grown, the coffee pot stayed warm, and folks stopped in for more than feed whenever there was a storm. Oh, Miss Evelyn ran the place since 1979. She knew every kid, every ranch, every hard and troubled time. But what folks talked about the most was a rusty iron key hanging from a nail above the door for everybody to see. Nobody locked their houses much back when the town was young, but times changed like the weather, and trust grew harder to come by. Still that key stayed hanging there through every passing year, and if you asked Miss Evelyn why, she'd smile and say it's here. For the day somebody needs it more than pride will let them say, for the day a soul gets stranded and can't find another way. And she'd pour another coffee and go back to her routine, leaving folks to wonder for what she really meant. That's the key above the door for the lost and the worn, for the hearts carrying burdens they weren't meant to carry along. When the road gets dark and lonely, when hope gets hard to find, there's still a place in this world where somebody leaves a light behind. Then came the blizzard of '08, worst anybody knew. white walls of snow, swallowed fences, trucks, and every familiar view. A ranch hand named Miguel got caught 30 miles from town. His engine quit, his radio died, and the temperature kept dropping down. By pure luck he found the store near midnight in the storm. The windows dark, the streets deserted, not another soul around. But there beside the entrance, hanging where it always had been, was that a rusty iron key and a note tucked underneath. It said, if you're reading this tonight, come inside and get warm. There's soup in the freezer, blankets in the back room. Pay it forward when you can. That's the key above the door, for the lost and the worn, for the hearts carrying burdens they weren't meant to carry alone. When the road gets dark and lonely, when hope gets hard to find, there's still a place in this world where somebody leaves a light behind. The next spring folks gathered round and asked Miss Evelyn why. She said, my daddy taught me something before the day he died. He said, kindness ain't kindness if it waits for recognition. The best things people do are usually done unseen. Now the key above the door still hangs where it hung before, and travelers tell stories about what that little town stands for. Not the mountains or the cattle, not the rivers running wide, but the simple faith that somebody will help you through the night. Yeah, the key above the door still leaves a light behind. There was a foreclosure sign nailed to the gate, 5 rocky acres just outside Cheyenne. The barn leaned hard to the west wind, and the fences barely stood again. Everybody said, boy, don't buy that place, you'll spend your whole life chasing repairs. But I saw a porch where kids could laugh, and a future hanging in the air. I worked double shifts through the winter months, loaded feed and fixed old rigs. Every paycheck stretched like barbed wire, trying to make enough for little things. My wife planted flowers by the mailbox, though the ground was stubborn clay. She'd smile and say, give it some time, good things grow that way. All we had was 5 acres and a dream, a little faith and a lot of gasoline. More hope than money, more grit than luck, and an old red tractor that wouldn't quit. Yeah, life wasn't easy, but it felt right, building something under those wide
5 acres and a dream. By year 5, the barn stood straight again. The pasture turned a healthy green. There were bicycles by the front porch steps and little muddy boots by the screen. One evening I watched the sunset fall with my daughter sleeping on my knee, and I realized every sacrifice had become exactly what I needed. All we had was 5 acres and a dream, a little faith and a lot of gasoline. More hope than money, more grit than luck, and an old red tractor that wouldn't quit. Yeah, life wasn't easy, but it felt right, building something under those Wyoming skies. Sometimes a man gets richer than he seems with 5 acres and a dream. World keeps telling you bigger is better, more land, more money, more things to own. But peace don't care about square footage. Sometimes it lives where love has grown. Yeah, we started with 5 acres and a dream. Now every board and field means something to me. Every scar on my hands, every long hard day helped build this life brick by brick. And when the stars come out above the plains and the porch light glows soft and clean, I thank the Lord for everything He gave me through 5 acres and a dream. Yeah, the best things I ever held in my hands were never things at all.